welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us here at the Lumar New Year, New Search SEO strategies for 2025. I'm going to make some predictions, see whether or not they come true. Maybe some bets. I don't know. Chris, do you feel like betting?
Absolutely, I always do. I'm down for a good wager.
Excellent. So, kicking off, got some introductions and whatnot. And some housekeeping. First off, so the closed captions, if you want to enable them, you just need to click on the CC icon at the bottom of the screen. If you can't see it, you may need to click the more icon first and then choose the show subtitle. If you want the live transcript, same sort of area, you've got to click on the CC, but then choose the view live transcript. And finally, we will be distributing this in a few days. Got to record it first. If you're here for the live version, then welcome. Thank you very much. But yeah, in a few days, it'll be out and you'll be able to watch it ad hoc. Next up, introductions. So we are joined today by the man of steel himself, Christopher Steele, and the wonderful Rachael Powell. I just couldn't think of a pun for your name. I'm sorry, Rachael.
Thanks, Rich. That wonderful is nice. Thank you.
I mean, I will certainly take this. That's great.
And of course, myself, if you can put up with me. Here's some of the agenda. Obviously, the introductions and housekeeping. So the first one that we're going to discuss is probably, as you can expect, the big one, AI and search. But in addition to that, we've got new search competitors, content quality and increased scrutiny, structured data and schema markup, and some user-focused optimization, because we shouldn't forget about the users. Then at the end, we'll have time for some questions and answers. Last little bit of housekeeping. The questions, if you could type them into the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, then they'll sort of feed through and we can answer them at the end. We do have a little feedback thing. It takes less than a minute to complete, but we'd love to hear what you think of this. And then, of course, as mentioned before, it's on demand. It will be shared in a few days, and you'll be able to watch that as and when you've got the ability to. So we'll kick off with a poll question 1. So which prediction do you think will have the biggest impact for SEO in 2025? And I'm fairly certain I know what the answer will be. But I'm not allowed to vote, so.
We can't vote, but
No, we're not.
Yeah, if I could vote, it's going to be AI and search.
I think that's
Almost
what we're going to see
certainly.
across the board. That's my
Yeah.
prediction about this.
It'd be really interesting if it wasn't.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
In the chat, we have people from very much all over the world, seeing hi from Denmark, Germany,
Oh.
Norway, Manchester, Prague, somewhere near Nottingham in the UK. Hi, everyone.
Very diverse group today for sure.
Yeah.
So we've got people from London and France and everywhere else. And I think we see the poll results now too as well.
We do, and it's an overwhelming AI and search.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah. Not surprised in the slightest. The user-focused optimization, I think that will always be something that we have to think about because it's the next step, but I don't want to spoil the discussion for later. And the impact of new search competitors, I think, ties in with AI quite heavily. But AI and search, like everybody's talking about it. What a sort of impact. We don't even know what impact it's going to have in terms of click rate and things like that. So with that in mind, and let's move on to our first one, which is AI in search, of course. So I'll pass to you, Rachael, first for your thoughts on what's going on with AI, what do you think is going to happen, and where do we go?
Yeah, it's just been such an advancement in how we search online, and with tools like ChatGPT and Perplexity, they offer such a different experience when we do search online. And I feel like it's for us to figure out how to best serve the content we want to provide so that, as well as being found high up in the Google SERPs, how do we also provide it so that AI tools can easily scrape it and then serve that to users also? But yeah, it's just changed so much so quickly, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree that the sudden switch, I think, is the biggest thing in terms of how the search has changed.
Yeah.
What do you think about that, Chris? You got anything to add?
Definitely. I agree. It's shaken up the whole landscape of what we've done. We're talking about shifting from standard search results and SERPs features to generative engine optimization, AI augmented search features. We've kind of taken a shift. Before, positioning was the ultimate scoreboard for performance or for success, and now I think it's probably going to shift more towards visibility, because you typed a question or a query into Google in the past and you got an answer. Maybe you got a link to a site. Maybe you got an answer to a question if it was a search feature. But now you get a very conversational response when you're talking about something like Search GPT or Perplexity. So even the response and the outcome of what you get when you search something in there is very different from what we saw in the past. So AI is shaking up the whole landscape of what we do, and even how the outcomes of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There's two main things that stick out to me in terms of AI and search. One is we can't really track the impact of it at the moment. I'm hoping that changes in the future. We get some impressions data, we get some clicks data ideally as well as refer it. It'd be great to know what the person typed in to get there, and what the AI thought of that. But there's also how it ties in with how SEO currently works. So the way that they're digesting the information is very similar to how Google's always digested the information. They crawl the pages, find the links, they build out their models and the more complex stuff, and I have no idea how it all works in the back end. But they build it out, they build out these entities, and then they understand it and return it to users. So there's a weird sort of great position for SEOs because we're already along the lines of understanding how to optimize for AI and search because we already understand how search works.
Yeah. And it's like what you mentioned, Chris, about it being like more conversational. How do we cater to a more conversational search intent, and how can we provide results that AI LLMs can scrape when they are having that kind of more like conversational experience with the user? How do we cater to that type of result as opposed to like the standard traditional SERPs?
I think that's a phenomenal question, Rachel. A lot of it is understanding where LLMs are gathering their data. How are they learning? What data are they being fed to learn and shift and change and give a response? And we don't really know for certain where all the information is coming from. We have ideas, we have theories, but we don't have any certainty about how LLMs are grabbing data and what they're doing with it precisely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cheers for that, guys. We'll move on to the second poll question here now. So, how have new developments in AI search impacted your SEO strategy? Which is, we're just scaling it. We're not asking you for specifics here. We're just scaling it on how much you've changed. Now, from my side, I initially thought there was going to be quite a big change here, but actually, it's more of the same in a way. It's making the page easier to understand for bots in simplistic terms. It's the best way I can describe it. Have you two done anything different, I guess, when advising clients?
I would say that it is shifting in the sense that it has. We're asking about impact, for example. There's a lot. All of us have done a lot of learning, a lot of research. We just released an ebook very recently where we talk about how we're looking at this information, how it's coming in, how we're processing. So if nothing else, right now it's changing our behavior. That's the impact it's having immediately. I do think down the road we're going to see a shift in strategy. I think we're going to focus more on what we should have been focusing on the whole time, better people-focused content, how we mark up pages, keeping our technical SEO clean. I think that's always been the things. You're right. It's more of the same, but I think there are higher stakes for doing those things now.
Yeah.
Cool. It's an interesting point about higher stakes. You're right. There's more being impacted. And we can see here that the distribution is towards the upper end. Obviously, 35% saying minor impact so far, moderate impact at 42%, and extensive 9%. So that gives you 51% are saying that it's had a moderate to high change on it, which is significant. I mean, it's something we hadn't even, you didn't do anything to do with it like a year or so ago, maybe a little bit longer than a year, but it's such a rapid change. Cool. I'll move on to the next point that we were going to say, and it's the new search competitors. And this is a big one for me, and I'll pass to you, Chris, first. What are your thoughts on this?
The landscape of search is certainly changing. I know that we've talked about this internally. I read something recently, and I'm sure someone will probably have the link to validate where I found it, but like Google has less than 90% of the search, if you will, just field or available search real estate, if you will, less than 90% for the first time in like over a decade, I want to say, maybe longer than that, because Search GPT, Perplexity, things like that are where people are going. Even social media platforms where people are going for search now, for search query answers, as opposed to Google just being the 600-pound gorilla in the room in the past, and that being the main source of where you go for search. So the competitive landscape is certainly shifting. Those two I just named, Perplexity, Search GPT, even the augmentation of what Google's doing now with Gemini, with AI overviews showing up as a search feature. Clearly, it's something we didn't have a year and a half, 2 years ago, but I think it's just going to continue to evolve. This is a prediction that I think I made maybe in the same ebook I referenced previously, where I think we're going to see more AI-based search features. I think we're going to see more competitors in search. It's just, we're at the edge of it now. It's just now starting to change. It's going to continue to shift and change, I believe.
Awesome. Cheers. And Rachel, what are your thoughts on this?
I think it's just such an interesting conversation, like in terms of potentially like clients that might have seen like reduced click-through rates due to, more content being served right there in the SERPs and also being scraped and provided by like Perplexity, ChatGPT, things like that. How do we kind of combat that and increase those click-through rates to a way that actually gets users onto the websites, conversions happening? Instead of it just being like, obviously we want it to be scraped and served right there in Google, but also it's like thinking of strategies to combat that potential decline in click-through rate as well. Because obviously, like we mentioned, with the AI, it's more of like a conversational way of getting those results. And it's just interesting how we're gonna like alter our approach and cater to that. Um, And it's like I do get a lot of client questions about this, and it's something that still feels new, and it still feels like I'm very much learning about this too myself. So I'm trying to understand, and just like every day, it feels like we get new info about a new potential new competitor that we have to learn, understand, and figure out what's the best way to serve our content type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, my thoughts on this are a kind of nuance to what Google's been coming under in terms of pressure recently. So they've been caught out a little bit in terms of the legalities. Obviously, in America, they've had the thing where they've got to break up some parts of it because they're a monopoly. And they've obviously reacted to AI in search in particular, well, the response, I should say, from AI because they wanted to do their own thing. If they didn't think it was a big deal, they wouldn't have done anything with it. And they certainly wouldn't have injected it so early into the search results. So they're coming under a lot of pressure. If they don't respond to that pressure, if they just kind of carry on as they go, I think we will see them decline a little bit. I'm not saying they're going to suddenly become the second search engine or anything like that. But I think, again, their market share will continue to decline, which is something we've not really experienced for, gosh, since I've been working, I think Google has been just constantly growing.
Yeah.
And it would be interesting to see if someone can pick up some of that extra.
Yeah.
But yeah, I shall move on to the next one, which is content quality and increased scrutiny. Now, this one in particular, the increased scrutiny, I was particularly referring to the issue with oh, it slipped my mind now, but where they handed out the manual actions for people who were having non-related content effectively. I've forgotten exactly what it was called now, but that's what I was thinking of when I saw this slide. And for me, it's sort of a refocus from Google because AI generated content has increased, sort of lowered the overall quality. I think that's one of the big criticisms of LLMs when the generation of it is it has a certain level of quality and it's base, I would say. Now they've scrutinized it and tried to push it down where they could, but I don't think it's working very well. And this other side of it is even your existing stuff, if it's written by somebody else, they're penalizing you now for it, which seems a bit extreme. Do you have any additional thoughts, Rachel?
Something that before we met, we spoke about like site reputation abuse, and with the prevalence of AI, people have the ability to create like hundreds of thousands of like things like fake reviews, and it's easier to kind of like potentially build up a more of like a toxic backlink profile for sites now, and that's something that I think has to be really thought about. Obviously, Google focus is on trust signals, and with things like user reviews and things like that, that's a big signal. And also something that I think comes to mind with this is like author credentials. Google has, I know, made a big point of they want content that is authoritative, and they will prefer content that is written by somebody that understands and has good credentials and understands what they're talking about over somebody that has just used AI to, put something together and scrape from the internet. And it's like, how do we set that content apart, the legit content apart from maybe the more AI generated, lower quality stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Yeah, and in particular with your money or your life search results, I feel like that's something that they're getting very strict with.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this, Chris?
I kind of agree with where Rachel's stance is on this. I really believe with the site reputation abuse penalties that we've seen handed out to some very large sites, helpful content updates rolling out the previous year, things like that. Google usually they kind of mask what the focus is and maybe what the key to ranking in the past was, and they've let us know right now that quality content written by authoritative entities or people is what they're going to value right now. They, in no way, shape, or form have they hidden the fact that if you are a site that creates quality content, if you have brand identity and reputation, you will do well, whether it be generative AI, whether it be just traditional SERPs features and SERPs positioning. That's the focus. I think we're going to see a shift. Companies that have the team, the scale, and just the budget to write massive amounts of content every year and just pump out content all the time are going to have to rethink the strategy, and they're going to have to refocus on maybe re-optimizing content that was successful in the past, or focusing and doubling down on content topics that were successful in the past versus just focusing on the scale of content and just saying we can just put out as much as we can. I think that's what site reputation abuse, the penalty told us, is like you can't have third-party entities writing content and it under your domain and it be okay. We're not going to allow that anymore. And it hit a lot of really big names that we thought maybe were above being penalized or algorithmically filtered out, to say that no one's above this and no one can really escape it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think content quality there is pulling that out there in terms of the AI generation aspect of it. If the content quality is good, and it doesn't matter where it came from, exactly as you said, then Google has indicated, I think they've outright said, in fact, that we don't care that it's generated by AI. We care that it's good. We care that it's quality content. And that's the key part to sort of take away from that. When you're doing something with these tools, it's to make sure that the actual output of it is high quality, because that is the difference maker.
Yeah. Amanda in the chat called out the site reputation abuse, which we mentioned, and then something from Jim in the chat. Does that increase the importance of links being built? And I would say yes. I would say it increases the importance of quality backlinks being built from sites that are relevant to the content, sites that have a high domain authority, sites that are trustworthy, definitely. But I'd say that a strong backlink profile is definitely important, and it's a huge ranking factor for Google. But it's the quality of those backlinks, and you know, I've seen sites in the past just absolutely tank from like the rankings tank from a couple of ill-placed backlinks from, these sites that just are out to purchase links and things like that. So I would say the importance of links being built is strong, but to the right sites. What do you guys think?
I agree. I would think kind of tongue in cheek that Google would tell us that great content will generate links on its own, just shared through
Mm,
natural and organic channels will generate strong backlinks. Now we know backlink building is a thing and it always has been. It's been more abused in the past, and I think there's more swim lanes or structure around it now. But a lot of what we've been told is that quality content will in itself build a foundational backlink profile. If it's once again, it's written by an authoritative source, it is quality content, it shares and is useful, it shares well and it's useful to the readers, that'll happen naturally. Now we know that people are not going to wait for it to happen naturally, but essentially it should build a base on its own if it's great content and it actually has a space in whatever subject matter field that it's written for.
yeah. And I feel
Absolutely.
like
And
if you are trying to, compete with a competitor that might be ranking higher than you, like one of the first things to look at is that competitor's backlink profile. Like have a look where they're at in terms of the number of links and where they're getting those links from. Um, that's something that I tend to look at if we're looking at like competitors and how to rank higher than our competitors. Sorry, Rich, didn't mean to cut you off then.
no, I was just agreeing with Chris, so that's totally fine. Cut me off.
That doesn't
Yeah.
happen very often. There was a question in the chat that I wanted to address on this. I think it's Nicholas that says, excuse me, not Nicholas. Let me just check this out real quick. Essentially, the question was, what is the thought about LLMs taking quality content and kind of regurgitating it in some of the features that kind of increase the probability of a zero-click positioning? I think this is something that we're going to have to live and work around, right? Like I think I said earlier that the shift is coming from SERPs positioning to more about visibility. At the end of the day, you're either going to create quality content and do your absolute best to block any type of bot from scraping it and using it as, data that can be learned from by an LLM, which I still don't think is probably going to work for you. Or you're going to have to adjust to the fact that if you create great quality content and you are an authoritative voice in that field, an LLM is going to take your content, it is going to use it, and it is going to serve it up in a zero-click position. The question is, what do you do next after that? How do you still perform well when someone may use your content or see your content in the SERPs feature and not click on a link to go to your site?
Yeah, I think we've very much opened Pandora's box there. Essentially, the LLMs are taking content and they are getting backlash now. And I think we're probably going to see that continue throughout the next few years, to be honest. Because some of the content you could argue it's not theirs to share, and yet they're sharing it and potentially profiting from it. So there's a lot that's going to shake out from that, and how that all is figured out is going to be key to what happens, in particular to publishers, because publishers, I feel, get the real short end of the stick here, where they write something high quality, and then an LLM serves it off their site, so they don't get the benefits of that content. So there's a lot to be seen for the LLMs, I think, yet. At the moment, it's the party time for the LLMs, but I think there will be some restrictions put in place, or there's some modifications. Something will happen that will change again, probably within the next year, but it, the wheels of legislation turn extremely slowly.
Yeah. An interesting interesting note from Sarah. She posted in the chat a keynote from the New York Times. The publisher's core argument is that the data that powers ChatGPT has included millions of copyrighted works from the news organizations, articles that the publications argue were used without consent or payment, something the publishers say amounts to copyright infringement on a massive scale. Do you think there will be more penalization?
It is yet to be seen. I mean,
Yeah.
again, exactly right. The publishers are getting the short end of the stick here, and
Mm.
imagine to use Chris's example, and then we should probably move on because we've been on this for a while. But to use Chris's example, you block someone from, or you block an LLM from hitting your website, from crawling your website and ingesting that data. Well, what if somebody copies your information, puts it on another website that isn't blocked from an LLM, and then the LLM ingests that data and uses it? So you've taken steps to actually actively stop that data from being consumed and reused, and yet it's still available to be consumed and be reused. In particular, I'm thinking about sites that republish articles. So if you imagine someone like MSN, they might republish something from somebody else, canonicalize back to it, of course, indicate who the original author is, but they're not necessarily going to block that LLM from consuming that article.
Mm,
So it still gets the data that it wanted in the first place.
yeah.
It's a great point. One thing that needs to be said before we shift to the next question is that there are a lot of, we can't monitor this yet, right? Now we have some
No.
ideas of like LLM bots that are scraping sites, but we don't know. And as clearly as we can see Google bot or any other type of search engine bot scraping a site and crawling it. There's tools that are coming out now where we can kind of monitor this in the future. They're not there yet. They're not where they should be, and they're not certainly as accessible as they're going to be. But this is going to be the next thing of knowing, the idea of limiting access to content to your site and knowing that a bot is attempting to do this. We're gonna see a shift in the future where we see more visibility into knowing if this data is getting pulled from your site into an LLM.
Yeah, that would be great. And I think essential as well.
Definitely.
Right, I'm going to force us to move on because otherwise we'll not get through the rest of it. So the next one, which is also tied into AI in a way, is structured data and schema markup. So I'll pass to you, Rachel, first.
Yeah. I think something we wanted to touch on here was like evolution of like newer schema types, like how to FAQ schema, just thinking about ways to effectively use schema and try and figure out like on our site where are the chances that we can use schema to better serve content and help bots and LLMs kind of just like categorize this content that we want to deliver. Um, th those kind of are the things that come to mind for me, and how we can use those to like enhance content visibility.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing to note with LLMs and like any bot, I suppose, is that they are a robot. They have
Yeah,
parameters. They understand things by picking it out and categorizing it in information. If you use structured data and schema, then essentially what you're doing there is saying, this is the category I want this data to be in. It makes it so much easier for them. So
yeah,
this is very much leaning into AI search, and after everything we've just said about LLMs and then taking data, this is leaning into it, allowing them to do that, but then trying to control and understand what they actually share back so that we have some modicum of control there. What do you think about this, Chris?
I tend to agree. I've heard both sides of this argument of like, hey, um, putting structured data and schema markup in place so that you clearly can help a bot understand and define what your content's about on your page. There's some arguments that would be made that LLMs can do this without structured data, but my thing is like if you've leaned in, if you've gone to the side of I want this to show up in augmented search results, or I want this to show up in something like Search GPT or Perplexity, then I think it can't hurt, right? Like you said, it is you're literally kind of creating your own focus point and swim lane for where you want your content to be classified at. What do you want to be the main point, and what do you want something scraping your content to take away from this? What's the focus? I think doing it at scale is probably something that I'm hearing a lot about from my clients, looking at this and saying, hey, I've got something basic on my site like organizational schema or web page schema. What can I do to get beyond that to maybe see better results with like AI overviews, or to see it show up in Perplexity, or see it show up in Search GPT? And the first thing is you've got to have content that's worth showing up there, right? Like your 5 blog posts that you wrote 2 years ago isn't going to be helped by the fact that you put schema markup on there. But if you're creating content that's quality and you're authoritative, once again, I think it's only a benefit. I don't see it as a drawback, and it's something that maybe if you have the bandwidth and the team that can put it in place, that it actually could have quite the impact on your site.
yeah. I think it's going to be really interesting as well, just to see how like structured data is going to adapt to power those more conversational queries that we spoke about earlier. And provide those answers within the AI models? How is the structured data? Are we going to get like new types of structured data to help with that? I think that's going to be interesting to see how that progresses this year.
Yeah, you make an interesting point there actually, because Google has driven quite a lot of the new structured data in the sense of, when they announced they were adding review schema into the SERPs, everybody rushed to put the review schema, and then the author stuff, everybody's rushing to put this on. And the same applies with like prices and is it on sale, etc. So
Yeah.
at the moment, you have Google driving it. Well, if SearchGPT or one of the other competitors gets big enough, are they going to start driving their own markup that they want? Are people then going to be saying, well, hold on, like I want these features, so I'm going to reach out to SearchGPT's stuff and do their stuff. And I think that's extremely likely. If there's a benefit to it, then that's what we chase as SEOs. We look for the little 1% extra all the time so that we can keep adding and adding and adding.
Mm,
Although it might be more than 1% in some cases.
I think you're
yeah.
absolutely
Yeah,
right,
that's
Rich. Not to, sorry for stepping over everyone, but like when product variant schema came out, I can't tell you how many e-commerce sites came and said, "Hey, should I implement this?
Oh, yeah.
Can we have a use case for how this is going to show up and how it's going to help?" And there's some really great SEOs out there. I wish I could give them the credit right now. That did some case studies on how implementing product variation schema helped improve some of the SERPs features that we see right now. And I think we're going to see the same thing with, like you said, some of the competitors out there for generative engine optimization and AI augmented SERPs features. Say, hey, we're gonna have our own markup structure that's just specific to this. And if you implement this, there's a possibility you could see this show up in some of the AI overviews or some of the once again generative engine optimization kind of features and platforms.
Yeah.
absolutely. And just saying you can track structured data in Lumar, just a little tie
Yes.
back to the marketing.
Shameless
We have
plug.
lots of
Uh,
reports for structured data that I love. Very useful.
and I'll move on to the last one, which is, oh yeah, the users named. The title was named by me, so I take full blame for that one.
Should.
But something something to absolutely focus on here. The whole point of SEO is to get the users on the site so they do something that you want them to do. So if you don't think about the users on this in this aspect, are you really doing SEO or are you just getting more traffic? I'll pass to you, Chris, to shut me down on that one.
I was going to say, you're going to hurt a lot of feelings with that last statement. Are you really doing SEO if you're not focused on the users? Because there's been decades of SEO that had nothing to do with the person clicking and just showing up in the search results.
Trying
Um,
to be controversial for my brand.
you are. You're definitely going to build some haters out of this one, or at least some enemies. Um, I think this is going to be the overall shift. We've talked about kind of at a micro level how things are going to change. I think this is going to be something that should have been the focus all the time, and now it has to be the focus because at the end of the day, if you're an e-commerce site and you show up in an augmented, search over AI overview, augmented search feature, something like that, okay, fine. You still have a product that you have to click on a link, go to your site and purchase. Although there's some features that even change how that process works. But if you're a person who provides answers or shares information or authoritative voice or something like that, you're going to have to adapt to how you present, create content. Because if you answer simple questions, those are going to be zero click features that are going to show up in search results, and no one's going to click through to your site possibly. Um, if you write more and you focus more on what a user or what someone who's after your information really needs, I still think you're going to see a decrease in visits to your site, but I also think you're still going to be the authoritative voice for whatever subject matter you're creating content around.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the classic case of 10 clicks but one conversion is exactly the same as one click, one conversion. It's an extreme example, but just for the purposes of illustration, but that's kind of what we're sort of thinking about there. What about you, Rachel? What do you think about this?
I think Google, there's a growing emphasis on inclusivity, and ensuring that websites are accessible to everyone is so important. And even like accessibility as a ranking factor, we should be looking at things like that, how to use ARIA labels and how to use methods to make our site viewable, our content readable by everyone who accesses the internet. Looking at like site speed in particular, figuring out how we can, deliver, just deliver fast, when I'm on a site, if I get a content layout shift, so annoying. If I'm shopping somewhere and I keep getting content layout shifts, I'm out. So it's things like that, thinking about things like that and how to make sure that your site is accessible for everyone. I think that's really important. And I do think that is quite an important ranking factor as well that Google considers. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, I think it's hard to boil it down to a ranking factor, but there's one thing we absolutely know for certain, and that's things like click-through rates are they're not directly tied to it, but they come back and they're reused as ranking factors. They're used as part of the core web updates. That is some of the information that is used to decide whether or not a page should be ranking where it is ranking. And then if Google doesn't like that, it changes it. Now, I was speaking to someone the other day specifically. Apparently, Google predicts whether or not you're going to click on a link, and then if it matches that prediction, then it's in the right place, essentially, or somewhere
Oh,
around that region.
interesting.
Now, I don't have the full details on that, but essentially, that's kind of that they're predicting everything on this side. So, if you're making things more likely for people to click through, then it's only going to benefit you. If you're making things more accessible, if you're making things that people want to click on, it's only going to
Mhm.
benefit you in rankings and of course users.
Agreed. Agreed.
So,
Rachel, that was a great perspective coming from the aspect of accessibility. I think you're right. I think it's a big focus. I think we're never clear on what all the ranking factors are, and we never will be, but I think
Yeah.
it's something to focus on in terms of an actual, once again, a user experience. If someone has any kind of impairment, any kind of issue, visually, audio, whatever, if the page is not accessible to them, they're not going to come back. Google still measures this. I won't call it a ranking factor, but they certainly have taken great pains to emphasize wanting sites that are accessible to everyone, no matter what the
Yeah.
situation is. It could be something like, continuous layout shift or something like that, or it could be the fact that it's not something that someone with a visual impairment can read or even navigate their way through, and that matters.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks very much for that, both of you. We'll start to wrap up now with the poll question number 3, and I've just flashbanged myself. So, would you like a demo of Lumar's website optimization platform? And the answer is yes.
It's always yes.
To
Oh
call
God, I've
back to
lost my
some of
mouse.
the stuff we mentioned on the last slide, I know I work for Lumar, but some of the site speed stuff that we have and some of the reports we have in terms of site speed and accessibility, I think are pretty fantastic, and they're all in the tool. So I think that is a really good side of the tool.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely going to agree, and I suspect Chris might as well.
I
But
guess
we're
I'll
also
agree as well.
biased.
Very biased.
So we'll move on to the last one, which is some questions, and I'll stop sharing so I can actually see some of the questions. I say that and then struggle to find them. Right. Yes, we've got 5 Q&A questions. Did we? Well, actually, no. I was going to say, did we answer any of these? But it looks like actually these are brand new ones. So
We have
we've
addressed a
got
few.
Serge. Oh, okay. Well, tell me off if I'm asking one that's already been asked. But Sergi's asked, what impact of AI overviews do you see across your clients, perhaps split by industry, e-com, travel, SaaS, etc.? Either of you want to take that one?
For me, it's still quite early to answer that. I couldn't say a decline in click-through rates. I couldn't give anything concrete because it's still quite early and we're still understanding how our content is being viewed by the LLMs. So it is still quite early on for me and my clients in that area. I don't know if you've seen anything different, Chris.
I'm building some cases, is what I'll say. I agree. It's a bit early. I would say I've seen some impact from maybe some of the publication sites. Um, uh, for example, let's just go to something simple like Search GPT serving up their content, but no real links to the sources. Now, if you ask for a source, it'll give it to you. Same thing with chat doing that. But those kind of things are what we're seeing right now and kind of building out a model to like how much traffic are you losing, or there's this impacting on conversions for any kind of perspective. But that's the first and easy kind of example to give. E-commerce is something I'm looking at right now, impact to that. But I don't have anything fairly built out yet that I would be willing to share on this. That to be continued from my perspective. There'll be some information, some data, and case studies on that coming soon.
Awesome. We'll look forward to that. So the next question here is, I really like the look of this one, is Nicholas has said there's talk that SearchGPT is not capable of executing JavaScript. How do you think it will fare as opposed to Google in a very heavily reliant on JS world? I am working on something actively with this. It's true, as far as we're aware, LLMs don't execute JavaScript. So effectively what that means is anything that is rendered by JavaScript or content, words, whatever it is, links even, that's not going to be discovered by the LLM. Now, we're working on, not to spoil the surprise too much, but working on figuring out what sort of percentage of websites are essentially missing content and what is that content that is being missed. So that's something that I am very interested in, where we're trying to figure that out right now. I don't know if either of you have anything more that you wanted to add to that.
A little bit. I think there's something there, like you're saying. You mentioned dynamically rendered content. I think of internal linking structure, right? If you've got JS rendered links or dynamically generated links, I should say, that play into your internal linking structure, that maybe it's supportive content, maybe it's something else. Some of the LLMs aren't picking that up. It's not serving them up. It's not doing what it would. Where Google does a little bit better of a job. That I don't think they're 100% on rendering JavaScript. I don't think any of us would say that. But it's much worse with some of the large language models and some of the platforms like that. So we'll see how that impacts us in the future. I think it's going to adjust. As my prediction is that they're going to get better at it. They're not just going to stay with, we don't really do great with rendering JS. They're gonna evolve and be able to do a better job, possibly a better job than Google one day.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you guys got that one. The only thing that's really come up for me with clients of this is like how are like JS redirects handled. But yeah, I think I'm excited for this research, Rich. That'll be great.
Yeah, fingers crossed it's quite productive.
Forward to seeing that.
There's another one that Nicholas has asked, which I have to answer, which is, are PBNs still a thing?
I was excited about this.
I mean, the technical answer, yes, they are. Do they
Yeah,
work? Sometimes. Should you do it? No.
I think we'd
That
be
would probably be
silly.
it.
I think we'd be silly to say that there's no private blog networks out there. I
Absolutely.
think they
Yeah.
are definitely utilized, but it's one of those like hush hush things in the SEO. Very diplomatic answer. What could we? I just feel like I think there definitely is, but it's on the hush hush, isn't it? So yeah,
I would agree. We all know they exist. Let's go ahead and just call a spade a spade. They exist. I
yeah,
agree with you, Rich. Should you be using them? Maybe not. I don't think there's any thriving PBN still out there, but I could be very wrong about that. That's just one man's opinion. So
Yeah, it's very risky to use them. There are in certain industries, gambling, for example, where
mm,
more black hat strategies are more prevalent, and as a result, the results can be all over the place. And if you ask me which ones are effective, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head now. A few years ago, I was monitoring them a lot more closely, but now I haven't kept an eye on black hat techniques.
mm.
Probably a good thing.
Controversially, I feel like they
Uh-oh.
are quite prevalent still in the financial industry. Just gonna say it.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I think that's still happening.
it's fair. I think it is by industry, and there may be some out there that are really, like I said in the past, there's not many thriving ones, but that's not necessarily true depending on where you're looking and what your goals are. Right? There may be
Yeah,
some that are really effective still, but again, the end thing is like I wouldn't recommend that being a strategy of yours.
yeah, I agree with you, Chris.
Now, I've just spotted the time. Are we okay to still answer some more questions, or do we need to draw this to a close? It's 5:46.
Let's go for at least one more real quick.
Okay. So we've got a choice of three. I've answered a couple of Nicholas's, so I think we'll skip that one. This one about domain authority. I want to answer, because it seems that the importance of domain authority has shifted to being less important in terms of being able to rank on Google and search engines in the last year or two. And content quality has become a bigger factor, allowing smaller brands with smaller domain authorities the ability to rank higher. Curious to hear your thoughts on this and if you think this trend will continue. Now, I'll start off by saying domain authority, as far as I'm aware, loads of testing and stuff like that, it's not a thing. However, the impact of things that would be domain authoritative, so essentially, I have a big website or I have a very popular website, therefore my subpages rank better. That does happen. So domain authority may not be a thing, but all the impacts of domain authority are real. And one of the main reasons behind this, and one of the interesting things that I've pinched a bit of the research that Mark Williams Cook did, I think it was, around the
It's so good.
endpoint stuff. So when you link, in fact, you don't even have to link, but when a brand is mentioned, they get some sort of benefit for that. Now, if the homepage is very strong as a result of lots of brand mentions, backlinks to the homepage and things like that, when they link to another page internally, some of that gets passed to that internal page. So essentially, that's domain authority, but with a different word.
Mm.
So that's what's going on here. And I think the importance of it is actually probably going up, which is interesting that you say it's going down less. I think big brands are getting rewarded for lower quality content now than they were before because of the brand name. It's an easy way to say, oh, they haven't generated AI results and low quality content because they're a big brand name. So that's my perception on it. But what about your two perceptions?
I would tend to lean more in the direction of you with a little bit of a caveat. I think I won't say it doesn't exist because, like you said, if all the outcomes of it and all the impact of it exists, then it has to exist, right? It's, if you can't see the wind blow, does it, you still feel it? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I would say that brand identity, brand awareness, whatever name or kind of buzzwords you want to put on it, brand exposure, visibility, all those things that you put in there to have a household name brand is going to be more of an impact in the future than you having a site in an obscure industry, but you have a phenomenal domain authority for it. Like I can tell you industrial sites, I can tell you different syndication sites that have a high domain authority, air quotes, but you've never heard of, right? They perform well from that perspective, but you've never heard of them. Whereas, like you said, you can have a really big, well-known publication site put out terrible content, and you're going to have more exposure and visibility. So my focus would be that more brand focused optimization, if you could, versus focusing and doubling down on domain authority.
Yeah. I like the idea of it. I think it gives like newer sites a chance to have increased visibility, and I would like to think that we will see this, but I don't know. Obviously, domain authority still is prevalent and it still is used. So when you're a newer site coming in competition with a site that's been there for ages, has a great backlink profile, it's harder to rank and be seen. So I like the idea of it, but I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it happening yet for me personally.
Yeah, bit more support for the little guys, Google. Come on.
Yeah. Come on, Google.
I'm sure they're here.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're here listening to what we have to say today.
Yeah.
Right. The last thing, whoop, I've gone back into slideshow mode. The last thing to quickly share was the last slide, which was, I'm going to struggle to share this now. There we are. I'm a tech expert, I'm sure. Get rid of those questions. Was just ready to dive deeper with last slide on here. It's just we've got an ebook with some of the SEO trends and some extra bits from lots of different people. So there's a really cool thing there that you can download. We've also got our blog if you want to read more about the stuff that we're doing, etc. See what other webinars might be coming up. And in fact, speaking of other webinars, we've got Optimizing Tech SEO Skills on the 12th of February 2024. So it'd be great to see you there, although I don't know who's doing that one. But yeah, if you can make that one, please do. Why have we got 2024? It should be 2025. Typo.
Yeah, it's all right. A little
Just call
typo.
attention to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just own it, lean into it, right?
We got it.
Oh, dear. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for the
Thanks.
questions.
Thanks so much, guys.